Alright, so in this video I'm going to show you how to implement protected routes in SvelteKit. Hold on just one second. I am offering free coaching to those of you who need help in JavaScript development, Flutter development, and most front-end or full-stack JavaScript frameworks. If you're not opposed to receiving some help, message me through Discord at 8dang. I'll be sure to include my tag below, but remember, I might not be able to help with everything, but I'll try my best. But with that out of the way, let's get back into the video. So before we get into any code, open up the terminal as usual, and then let's run npm init svelte. Select empty as a directory, click yes, skeleton project, yes using TypeScript syntax and no additional options, and then we're going to run one more command. We're going to say npm install Zod. We install Zod because I want to be able to simplify our validation for the inputs in the forms. So while we're programming, make sure to have npm run dev running in the background so we get autocomplete on the auto-generated types. So then we can close this terminal, and in the source folder, in the lib folder, let's create a new file called main.css. And let's also delete this index.ts file. And here, we're going to create one style, one with the body, saying that we're going to put no margin because me personally, I like no margin in my body. Just a personal preference. And I'm also going to say display flex so the children can be able to expand to the width and height of the body. So then flex direction column and also height 100 view height. So then we can close this file, and in the lib folder we're going to create another file called auth.ts, and in this file we're going to basically handle all of the authentication logic, which means creating the user, getting the user, signing up a user, everything, etc. So then the first thing we're going to do is create a type called user. So type user is equal to, and it's going to have three properties. One is a name, one is an email, and one is a password. And then we're going to create a users map. So new map. So we're going to map strings to users inside this map. So then we're going to create the first function. The function user with same email. So we're going to check if a user already is using an email. So this is not going to be a function that we're going to use inside one of the load functions or actions. We're just going to use this as a utility function inside the create user function that we're going to create in a second. So then we get an instance to all the values of the user's map. So in users array is equal to array.from users.values and then 4. So then we loop over this. So we loop over the users, and then we check if one of the users has the same email. So we say if user.email is equal to the email that we're testing for, we return true. And if none of the users have the same email, we just return false. Return user. No, return false. So let's make sure to call the values function. And now below this, we're going to export this function called create user. And it's going to take in a user as a parameter. And then we check if the user has, if the email is already being used. So user.email. We throw a new error if a user has the same email, saying email is already in use. And then we're going to get it. And then we're going to create a new ID with the crypto.randomuid function. And then we're gonna map this ID to the user that we're gonna create. So users.set ID and also user, and then we're gonna return the ID. So basically, we're gonna check that the email is unique. We're gonna get an instance of an ID or like a string, and then we're gonna map that ID to a new user that we're gonna create, and then we return the ID for the usage of the action, so that we can set the cookie of the user to the ID so we can know that they are authenticated. So then below this function, we're going to export another function called get user by email and password. And it's going to take two parameters, one email, which is going to be a string, and a password, which is also going to be a string. And then we're going to get access to the user's keys, not the values. We're going to get access to the keys. So we're going to see how that is in a second. So array.from users.keys. So basically, the keys allows us to get an iterable that allows us to loop over all of the IDs available in this map, and then we can get the available user that maps to this key. So let's loop over that in a second, right here. So then const user of users array, and then we're gonna say const user is equal to users dot get key. And just for type narrowing, we're just gonna say if the user doesn't exist, we're gonna break. But we already know that the user exists because we're looping over the user's array, but this is more for convention than anything else. So if the user.email is equal to email and user.password is equal to password, we return the key. So basically, we loop over this array and we check to see if the data matches from each one of these. And if it doesn't, we just return undefined. And finally, for the last function, we're going to create a new function called getUser with an ID, which is going to be a string. And then we just return users.getID. And that's it. We can close this file. And then inside the routes folder, we're going to create a new file called pluslayout.svelte. And inside of here, we're going to create a script with the lang property set to TS to allow us type script inside our script. And then we're going to import the main.css file that we created using the $lib acronym, not acronym, the placeholder. So this allows us, this $lib allows us to access the lib folder from any route in SvelteKit. So then we're going to create a container div that contains a main and a footer, and this footer is going to contain 4 links. So a times 4, and this is basically how you use Emmet. You just string a bunch of CSS element selectors, and it just generates the HTML for you. So then let's expand this, and then in the main, all we're going to do is provide the slot. And this slot is just going to allow us to insert the data from the route inside of this main, so it's not placed anywhere that we don't want it to be placed in. So the first link is going to route to slash, and it's going to be home. The second one is going to be /auth/sign up, so to the sign up page. So the text is going to be sign up. The third one is going to be to the login page, so /auth/login, so login. And then the final one is going to be to /account, account, right there. So then let's create a style, and then let's style the container so that it grows to the full height of the container, which is going to be the body. So then we're going to set the display to flex. We're going to set the flex direction to column so that it is aligned vertically. We're also going to justify the content space between. No, wait, not justify self, justify content, so that there's spacing between all of the different children. But specifically, we're just going to have 2 children, the main and the footer, but we just want it to be spaced out like differently. So space between, not around. And then let's add some padding just for styles. So 1 rem. And then in the footer, all we're going to do is just display flex. And we're going to add a gap in between each of these anchor elements. So gap 1 rem. And so far, let's see how it looks like. So right here, let's open up localhost. So you see welcome to SvelteKit, and you see the links on the bottom. So now we can close this file. So then in the plus page.svelte file, we're going to delete all the default markup, and we're going to add an h1 element that says unprotected, which is basically going to be the home page. So then we can close this file. So then in the routes folder, let's create a new folder called auth. And inside here, let's create a new file called pluslayout.server.ts. So in here, we're going to export const load is equal to, which is going to be an asynchronous function with the cookies. And this function is going to be satisfies layout server load. And by the way, if you're wondering how you get these auto-generated types, you just go over to your terminal and run npm run dev while you're coding, and it'll auto-generate these types for you. So then we're going to say const id is equal to cookies.get id. So then we check if the ID is not true, then it's all right. If the ID isn't true, we know that the user's not logged in, so we could just let them through. But now we're going to check if the user exists. So get user, let's import get user, the ID, and then we're just going to throw redirect if we see the user, redirect of 303 to /, and then we're just going to return. So you see that we check if the user exists and then we redirect. But if it doesn't, we just return and we let the user just go through. So then let's close this file. And then in here, let's create a new file called pluspage.server.ts. And then we're going to export const load. We're going to create a load function, which allows us to run code before the actual page is rendered. So we're going to get access to the cookies to see if the user has an ID. And this function obviously is going to satisfy page server load. And then we're going to throw a redirect of 303 to /auth/sign up. So basically, if they route just to the /auth, we're going to redirect them to /auth/sign up so they don't have to be as verbose as possible. But now let's create a new folder called sign up. So in here, we're going to create a new file called pluspage.svelte. And then we're going to create one more file called pluspage.server.ts. So in the svelte file, let's create a script with the language property set to ts. And then we're going to export let form to get access to the form data that we get back from the actions. I'll link up into the cards my tutorial on SvelteKit form actions right here. But as you know, we're gonna sign up, H1, and then we're gonna create a form with the method of post that contains 3 inputs. So input times 3 and a button. And then we can just remove the action from the form. We're gonna say sign up, and below the button, we're gonna create an if block, checking that if there's an error that was passed in from the server. So if form.error, we're going to include paragraph tag rendering the form.error. So now let's make sure to add the right inputs. So you see we create a name input, an email input, and a password input. So then that's all we need for here. Let's go over to the plusserver.ts file and let's close this file right here. So we'll use the Zod package to validate the input we get from the user. So const sign up schema is equal to z.object, and let's import z right now. So we import from Zod, and inside of here, inside the input, we just import z. So we're going to create an object that's going to be exactly the same as the input right here. Is going to have a name, an email, and a password input. So then it's going to be name is equal to z.string. Let's copy this down 2 times, and let's say email and then password. So the password is going to be a min length of 8. Email is going to be obviously an email, and then we're going to export const actions, and then we're just going to create a default action. We're not going to have any named actions specifically. We're just going to have the default action. And for this default action, we're just going to take in 2 parameters. One is the request and the other is the cookies. So then we're going to create a constant of ID. We're going to get access to the ID cookie. So .get ID. So if there's an ID in the user's browser, like the cookie, for example, we're going to get user using this ID. And if there is a user that maps to this ID, we're just going to throw redirect 303 to /. So now we're going to get access to the form data. So const form data is equal to object dot from entries await request dot form data. So basically what this does is that it gets access to the form data as a form data object. As you know, SvelteKit form actions passes the data natively through the form data structure, and we could have access to all of the data through this function called object.fromEntries. So basically this loops through all of the keys and all the entries from the form data and passes it as an object. So we're going to create a try catch block. So try const parse data is equal to sign up schema dot parse form data. So we're going to parse the form data to make sure that the form data is actually part of the sign up schema. So it's actually correct data. So we're going to catch the error like this. So in here, we're going to get access to the ID. So we're going to create a user and get access to the ID and just set the ID to the cookie of the ID. So we're going to say cookies.set ID is equal to ID. And then we're going to add some extra settings to this cookie. We're going to say that the path is equal to / so that it's universal, so that every route inside of this SvelteKit app can have access to this cookie. So we're going to say HTTP only is equal to true. So we're only going to be able to read this cookie from the server. So in the create user, we're going to provide the name. So parsed data.name. Email is equal to parsed data.email. Password is equal to parsed data.password. So now in the catch block, 3 if blocks. So first of all, if the error is an instance of Zod error, Then we're just going to return fail with the code of 500, which the error is going to be error.issues, the first issue, and we're just going to return the message of the first issue. And then we're going to pass in the form data. So let's import the fail function. So then below this, let's copy this down. And instead of zod error, we're just going to say error. And instead of the issues, we're just going to say the message. So then by default, if this is an instance of error and it's just some sort of arbitrary data structure, we're just going to say sample text. So if everything goes according to plan, we just throw redirect of 303 and to /account. So let's test this out right now. Oh, right here in the z.object, let's make sure to set the name length to a minimum of 1. So then right here, let's go to the sign up page and you see there's a form. And let's try to pass in some invalid data. So sign up and you see invalid email. Sign up, you see string must contain at least 1 character, and this is referring to the name. So let's pass in a name and let's pass in a valid email. Oh, and I forgot one important thing right here in the plus page. In the form, we're going to use enhance. So we're going to enhance this form so that all of this validation happens on the client side. So we're going to say test at email.com, and you see string must contain at least 8 characters, and this is referring to the password. So then test and you see 404 not found because we were redirected to the /account. But if we try to go back to the sign up page, you see they're redirected to the home and it is a protected route. So now let's restart the server to make sure that the map is restarted so you could press R inside the terminal to restart the server. And now we can go back to the sign up page because the cookie doesn't actually map to anything valid. So it is not actually a real user. So then let's create a new folder called login. And inside of this folder, we're going to create 2 new files, one called page.server.ts. And here we're also going to create another file called pluspage.svelte. And for this login, we could just copy some of the logic from here. We could copy this logic and paste it into pluspage.svelte. And let's just tweak this a little bit. So we're going to say login, and we're just going to take off the name input. And inside of the sign up form, we're going to copy all of this and we're going to paste it here. And instead of creating a user, we also rename this sign up schema to login schema, and we remove the name. And then we say that, so then we get the ID not by creating a user, but by getting it through the reference of get user by email and password. And we're going to pass in the parsed data.email and also the parsed data.password. Now let's add an extra step of validation. So then we check if the ID is true or not, or if the ID is null or not. So if it is null, we throw a new error saying that the user was not found. So user not found right there. So now let's remove this, import right here. So then we can close this file and let's see how it looks like inside the local host. So you see if we go to login, first of all, let's go to sign up and let's say test at email.com. And for the password, just test. 404 not found. You try to log in and it redirects us back to the home page. But we could go into storage and we could delete this right here. We could restart this. And we go to the login page again because we don't have the ID stored in our cookies. So then we can say test at email.com, test. And you see we logged in successfully. Let's go. So now in the routes folder, we're going to create a new folder called account. And here we're going to create 2 new files. One called pluspage.svelte and the other one called pluspage.server.ts. So instead of going first to the pluspage.svelte, we're going to actually create the actions first. We're going to create the load function. So let's create the load function right now to make sure that the user is actually logged in. So we can't actually access the account of a user that's not logged in. That doesn't work. So we're going to make sure that the user is logged in. So then we're going to get access to the cookies. So we're going to say const ID is equal to cookies.getID. And then we're going to say if the ID doesn't exist, we throw redirect with the code of 303 to /auth/sign up. So then if the ID does exist, we're going to get the user using the ID. So const user is equal to get user ID. So then if the user doesn't exist, we also throw redirect right there to the same page. And if everything goes according to plan and the user is actually logged in, we just return user. So then this load function is going to have to satisfy. So satisfies page server load right there. So then let's create one action. So export cons actions is equal to an object, and we're going to create a named actions, one called logout. And it's literally just going to be one line, actually 2 lines, which is going to be, we're going to clear the cookie. So we're going to cookies.delete ID. So we're going to remove the ID cookie, and we're going to throw a redirect back to the home page. So 303 to the home page. So now if we go to the account page, we can see that we could actually go to the account page and it doesn't redirect us out because we're actually logged in. But when we go to sign up or log in, it redirects us back to home. So now let's create the markup right here. So we're going to export a script. No, we're going to create a script with the lang property set to TS. And then we're going to export let data page data. So we're going to get access to the load functions data that gets returned to us. So simply, we're just going to render out some of the data that we get passed in from the server, and we're just going to render a button that allows us to log out. So then we're going to say welcome back data.user.name, and then we're going to say we're going to add a paragraph that just says user data colon, and we're going to create a pre tag that allows us to format the JSON that we want. So we're going to say json.stringify data.user, and we're going to say null and 4. So basically every indentation is going to be 4 spaces, and for the null, I don't really know what this does, I'm going to be honest, but I just know that this formats the JSON how I like it. And you see that we get access to the data. We get the name, the email, and the password. And then we're going to create a form with the method of post with the action set to account / logout with the method of post. And it's going to use the enhance. So we're going to use enhance right here. And then inside this form, we're going to create a button that just says logout. Simple as that. Let's just import enhance from $app/forms right there. So if we click this button, it should take us straight to the home page right there, and we won't be able to go back to the account page since the sign up page. But if we try to create an account with an existing email right here, so remember how we use test@email.com, email is already in use, and let's log in using that email. You see that we're logged in again. Thank you guys for watching. I hope this video served you value. I hope you watch my next videos, and maybe we could hop on a coaching call in the future. Thank you for watching. I see you in the next video.